Well, we are drawing near to the close of the book of Genesis, which we began some time ago now. It's had a lot of twists and turns, ups and downs. There's been plenty of details that I'm sure many of you or all of you have committed everything 100% to memory, and you'll be able to tell it all back to me when we hang out later after church. But in all seriousness, this story of the book of Genesis, when we first started those opening chapters, in particular when we got to the creation and then fall of man, we've been trying to establish that there has been one through line through this entire book. That the book of Genesis, from beginning to now the end, has been about establishing the messianic hope for the redemption of God's people. We claimed in the opening chapters, once again, that the story of Genesis follows a pattern of creation and then a fall and then the hope and promise of redemption out into the future. And as we come to the end now, this idea of the messianic hope, the hope of the seed, the offspring of the woman who would crush the head of the serpent, once again comes to the forefront in the blessings that come from Jacob to his sons. Now, that might not be apparent what was going on, because a lot of the details there are a little confusing, some of the language and imagery possibly obscure. But hopefully this morning, I do hope that we can clarify what's happening in this particular chapter and see once again, through prophetic words of Jacob, the hope of God's people that are all placed in a Messiah, in this case, a king, a ruler who is to come, whose ruling shall be established forever, and who all the peoples of the earth will swear allegiance to and will worship. Well, this morning, as we look at this, we see some of the background quite clearly. What we have, if it wasn't evident for us, are the final words, the final blessings of Jacob. These last few commendations to actually all 12 of his sons. Every one of his sons gets a particular word, a word spoken. And the focus here from Jacob is not just on what the sons should expect in their own lifetime, but he also gives them words for them and their people in some far off distant time, in the days ahead, the days that are to come, or elsewise, or other places translated, in the last days. Jacob gives his sons prophetic words that have dual meaning, both for them as individuals and then for them as separate tribes and people. And so what we're charged to do today is try to give ear and listen in the same way that Jacob tells his sons to. He assembles them and he tells them, sons, listen to these words, the last words of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father. And as we, as God's people, assemble here, we likewise join in that corporate hearing to listen to the words of Israel, our father, to listen to what he has to say, because indeed, all he has to say concerning the latter days, the last days, have to do with us as well. What does the future hold? And how, through prophetic word, do we along with them, hope in the Messiah of Israel, the Christ, our Lord? Well, those things are going to be under consideration as we look at chapter 49 under three headings this morning. Point number one is, blessings by birth order. Blessings by birth order. What's confusing about this passage, despite some of the imagery, is its structure. Quite clearly, as Jacob, assembles his sons, he speaks to them, all of them in descending birth order, beginning with the oldest, who is Reuben, and then goes all the way down to Benjamin. What's tricky, though, about it is that even though he speaks to all the sons in chronological order, his message to them isn't necessarily arranged like that. Really, he has three groups in mind when he speaks to his sons, and he's focusing on a particular thing for all of them. And so as it jumps from one to the other, you get like some sections which are really long, and then maybe one or two lines for some sons, and you're figuring, okay, what's going on here? To try and make it a little bit easy for us, we can summarize this section by saying that Jacob is giving these last words to his sons in dealing with the matter of birthright, and inheritance. what they should come to expect both in their life and then in the long distance future, as well as securing blessings and a birthright and inheritance. So if that's the case, we have these different groups. There's one group which really have no right to inherit preeminence amongst their brothers. Now, typically when we think of inheritance, birthright, as we spoke of this morning, it's like who's going to succeed the father? Who's going to be the next leader of the household, or in some cases, the king? And when you have 12 sons, that means that a lot of the sons, the majority of the sons, are going to be cut out from inheriting like a kingdom or anything in particular. And so the first group that he deals with, that we're going to reorganize this is just dealing with just general blessings for some of the sons and their tribes. There's about 7 of them that their blessings have nothing to do with a birthright or an inheritance. 7 sons which aren't necessarily preeminent, but that he nevertheless has mostly good things to say. For example, you'll see like in verse 13, he'll say, hey, Zebulun shall dwell by the shore of the sea. He's going to be a haven for ships, which we think, okay, that's cool, I guess. But you have to remember, at this point, these are nomadic people. They have no land of their own. In fact, they've left their land and they've gone to the land of Egypt. And so to have this promise that, hey, one day your tribe is going to inherit the coastlands and you're going to have the shores of the sea. I mean, that sounds pretty good. So things work out for Zebulun. Issachar, similarly, he's going to settle in the midst of the land. We're told there, verses 14 and 15, he's going to be like a strong donkey crouching between sheepfolds, meaning he's going to continue on in the shepherding of sheep, and he's going to be there in the midst of the land. Asher, verse 20, he's going to be known for producing rich food. He's going to yield royal delicacies. So, I mean, patisserie or something. He's going to be someone who produces nice food for whoever's going to inherit the throne. Naphtali in verse 21 is going to be fruitful, we see. Verse 27, Benjamin is going to run quite hot. And don't take this too negatively. He's going to be fierce. There's a bit of a hope and a promise here to Benjamin. He's going to be like a ravenous wolf. This doesn't mean that it's not a negative connotation. It just means he's going to be very tough and ravenous and aggressive. And as you read more in the Old Testament, like Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, they have a lot of warriors that come from their particular tribe. Warriors such as Ehud, who, like my favorite judge, who judges and goes and sticks fat King Eglon in the belly, and his sword gets stuck, and then he escapes through the latrine, and that guy was a Benjaminite. In fact, a lot of the tribe of Benjamin end up being warriors, and they end up being left-handed warriors in particular, which is a bit ironic because Benjamin means son of my right hand, and yet most of the tribe ends up being these left-handed fierce warriors. But that's good. This is a good blessing in verse 27 for Benjamin. Verse 19, Gad, he has a bit of a mix. It says he's going to get raided, but yet he's going to then repay those who raid him in return. So not all bad for him. The only one of these 7 additional brothers who really don't have much to look forward to is Dan in verses 16 to 19. Dan, it says, he's going to judge the people as one of the tribes of Israel, but he's going to be a serpent in the way and a viper in the paths. And as we've been talking about these 2 lines, a seed of the woman and then the seed of the serpent, and whenever somebody gets associated with a serpent, it's like being sorted into the house of Slytherin. Like you're not going to end up being a good guy. Very clearly, things don't work out for Dan, and Dan does struggle. And there's a prayer for a blessing here from Jacob in verse 18. He says, I wait for your salvation, O Lord, because it really is going to take the salvation of God to sort things out for Dan. But those are the 7 brothers who really have no involvement in terms of the inheritance or a royal line or anything like that. We don't want to overlook them, But quite obviously, Jacob's comments to all of these are rather brief for a particular reason. It's because the other five brothers, that they all are wound up in this idea of succession, inheritance, and again, the role that they're going to play in the coming of the Messiah, that offspring, that seed of the woman who's going to crush the head of the serpent and redeem God's people. So on the first hand, we see the blessings of this birth order. I want to see this second group now. Point number 2, the disinherited. The disinherited. I mean, we know as God's people, and as we read in the book of Matthew, that the Christ comes from the tribe of Judah. But how does that happen, and why does that happen? Well, the details are recounted for us and addressed here in this section when we deal with the group of disinherited brothers, which are the first 3 brothers, Reuben, Simeon, and Levi. Because again, if Judah is held and takes his prominent place, how do we get there when he's the 4th in line and there's 3 brothers ahead of him? Well, those things are addressed here in these particular passages. The firstborn, the one who should be preeminent, the one who should inherit everything from his father, and the one that has some extended and harsh words said is Reuben, beginning in verse 3. Jacob says, Reuben, you are my firstborn. He's intended to be the natural leader amongst his brothers. And indeed, according to natural gifts, quite clearly, Jacob recognizes that he is the strongest. That he possesses Jacob's own might. And he's the first fruits of Jacob's own personal strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. And so he is the ideal oldest brother. He's the strongest. He's the most powerful. He's inherited all these wonderful traits from his father. He is by all accounts, all intents and purposes, fit to lead. But of course, there's a problem. As we've seen, Reuben is a loose cannon. Unstable as water, his father says, you shall not have preeminence. So he reaffirms something that has already taken place. That is, Reuben has lost rights to be preeminent. He is no longer Jacob's intended heir. And it's because of something that he did that is consistent with this unstable, unreliable character. And what he did is described for us briefly there in verse 4. It says that you went up to your father's bed and you defiled it. He went up to my couch. This, of course, is a reference to a story that we had to cover in Genesis chapter 32, when after Jacob's beloved wife Rachel, whom he preferred, after Rachel died, his oldest son Reuben went and lay with his father Jacob's wife or concubine Bilhah, who was Rachel's concubine. And so Reuben did this egregious thing. He went and he lay with his father's concubine, which of course is grossly immoral, but it's also a wicked attempt to usurp the authority of his father. It was a power play by Reuben. It's what's referred to in Leviticus as uncovering the nakedness of your father. And what that phrase means is when you do such a thing to your father's wife, so that you can then take the place of your father in headship and authority over the household. And so what Reuben tried to do is he tried to take by force essentially what was already his right, which was first place in the family. This is the remarkable thing about Reuben and what makes him so unstable, is that by being the firstborn, he was born into a natural position of preeminence and authority. I mean, all he had to do was just wait, because the inheritance was already his. It's like the blessing was his. He had all these good things from his father set out before him, that all he had to do was obey him and to wait patiently for the consolation that would come in the future. But instead, what Reuben did is he tried to seize and take for himself, because he saw something desirous, the place of power, and he took it for his own. by laying with his father's concubine. At work in Reuben is what is at work in the heart of all sinful people. In fact, the first sinful man himself, Adam. It's a similar story over again, right? Where Adam had this guaranteed hope and blessing laid out before him. All he had to do was be patient and wait, did not eat of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and yet, with sin working, just like with Reuben, he seized and took for himself that which God was withholding. That would have been his had he properly waited in God's time. And so that, for Reuben, is why he has the birthright taken from him. That he's no longer the first in line, no longer a hope of the Messiah, and really nothing interesting happens with Reuben and the rest and his tribe in the rest of the Old Testament. There's no major figures that come from Reuben. There are no great leaders or kings or priests or prophets from Reuben because of his sin. There's also two other disinherited here, and they're paired together, and that is Simeon and Levi. In verse 5, we're told that Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their sword. So naturally, being the second and third in line, you would think that the inheritance and a birthright would pass from Reuben to one of those two brothers. And indeed it would have, except they have this ugly streak of violence in them. That they are cunning, and they are, by all intents and purposes as individuals, they're pretty bloodthirsty and wicked in that particular way. In verse 6, Jacob says, "Let my soul not come into their counsel. O my glory, be not joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and with their willfulness they hamstrung oxen." So not only are these guys murderers and have they slaughter people, but they also, that hamstrung oxen, that means that they just needlessly torture animals like oxen. Like they just string them up for sport, which is a wickedness, those who torment animals for sport. Well, what is he talking about here? Well, this has in mind another story in the book of Genesis 34. In that particular one, if you recall, I hate to have to bring this story up because it was so disturbing, but for the sake of the text here, we do. The sons of Israel had a sister, and her name was Dinah. When the people of Israel, along with their father, went and stayed near the land of Shechem, Dinah went out and she was defrauded by the prince of that place, a man named Shechem. She was defrauded before she was a bride, taken advantage of by this prince. And so the prince's father, Hamor, and Jacob, they have to figure out a way to deal with it, because then now Dinah would not be able to be wed after this incident. Jacob and Hamor, they come to an agreement that they're going to make the two wed, that they're going to make Shechem and Dinah just get married, and that would help gloss over the situation and sort all of it out. But Levi and Shechem devise a plan. They convince all the people of Shechem, all the men, that, well, it's unlawful for us to be joined to anyone who was uncircumcised. And so all the men of Shechem agree that they will all of the adult men will get circumcised so that this wedding could go through between Dinah and Shechem. And we're told that on the third day, when the soreness of the circumcision had fully set in and it's at its worst point, Levi and Simeon go to Shechem and slaughter everyone, men, women, and children. They make, because of this, their father stink in the land, we're told, that the people are aghast at what Levi and Simeon do. And so because of that act, Jacob then pronounces this curse on them. "Cursed be them," verse 7, "for their anger, for it's fierce, and their wrath, for it's cruel." And he tells them that he's going to divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. And as you cast forward to long generations after this particular moment, that indeed does happen. Simeon, we're told, he never really gets his own part of the land. That Simeon, his dwelling place, once the land gets divided up in the book of Joshua, his dwelling place is within the land of Judah. Because Judah is so big and so large, Simeon just gets a small place within Judah. And then eventually over time, Simeon as a distinct tribe pretty much fades. They lose their distinctiveness and are assumed into the tribe of Judah. Levi as well, though, he doesn't get an inheritance in the land either. He gets divided because Levi, and this is kind of a weird detail, the tribe of Levi never gets land at all. Now, they do receive a priesthood, and it's from the tribe of Levi that the priests do come. But in terms of earthly, so they are blessed in the future, but in terms of earthly inheritance, they really don't receive much of anything. So now we're down 3 heirs, 3 would-be suitors. No Reuben, Levi, or Simeon are to inherit. And clearly what we see here is that God has his hand in choosing through his providence who is going to be the one to inherit this birthright and this blessing. Tough words for these 3 sons, and yet that does leave out hope for 2 left. 2 left. So the third and final thing I want us to see is point number 3, the inheritors. Point number 3, the inheritors. There's only 2 choices left for Jacob, to whom he's going to bless and whom he's going to set this priority or this preeminence upon. There's there's Judah, and then Jacob's favorite, Joseph. What's remarkable is that, according to the text, Jacob chooses Joseph. There's no doubt about that. Jacob chooses Joseph to be the one who's blessed. And that's why you get so much language of blessing. The word blessing gets repeated over and over in Joseph's section. Verse 22, so Joseph is he's going to be fruitful. He's going to be so overrun, like he's going to be so fruitful. It's like a vine that just overruns the wall. It's going to be draped over. You can't cut it back. Joseph is going to be, he's going to have all the strength and power and might, like military might. He's going to be unmoved. He's going to be swift. He's going to be mighty. He's the mighty one of Jacob. Jacob says that, I'm going to bless everything. I'm going to bless your women. They're going to produce tons of children. I'm going to bless all your fathers. It's just blessing upon blessing that Jacob, quite clearly what we've seen, we know this about Jacob already. Joseph is his favorite, and he selects, according to his will, Joseph as this preeminent one. And the Bible interprets that for us, so this is not me making a stretch. So in other places, it speaks to this and reveals to us that this was Jacob's intention. For example, in 1 Chronicles 5, we're told in the first 2 verses, speaking of Reuben, it says, Reuben was the firstborn, but because he defiled his father's couch, his birthright was given to the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel, so that he could not be enrolled as the oldest son. Though Judah had become strong among his brothers and chiefs came from him, the birthright belonged to Joseph. So quite clearly, what we saw in the last chapter when Jacob blessed Ephraim and Manasseh, that was his way of passing the birthright on to Joseph. And by Jacob's choice, it is Joseph's house that is to become preeminent. But the final statement of the book of Genesis and how this champion, this Messiah, the seed of the woman would come about is that in the end, it was always God's choice. It was always about his decision and not the decision of man, even a man such as Jacob. And so, through prophetic word, we get the notion here that it isn't Joseph. Now, Joseph will be great. He'll be great in the north. Ephraim's going to be great. They stand toe-to-toe with Judah for a long time. But in the end, it's not Joseph who becomes the preeminent one, but it's Judah, the 4th brother. Judah, whose life has dramatically changed. Judah, who who came up with the scheme to sell Joseph, who abandoned his father, who went to live in the world. Judah, who neglected the duty that was owed to his daughter-in-law, the one who had wicked sons, utterly changed and humbled through the incident with Tamar. The same Judah who now honored his father, protected Benjamin before the face of the people of Egypt. The champion in whom all the prophetic hope, all the messianic hope is now bound up and is testified to here. Look at the ways in which the language describes Judah in these verses with me very briefly. Verse 8, we're told that Judah, your brothers are going to praise you. All these other tribes, all these other ones, they're going to be blessed. They're going to have, these individual things we've talked about, but ultimately they're going to find their hope and their blessing in the way in which they honor you. They speak well of you. They praise you. Because it's Judah who's going to have true strength, not Reuben. Judah is going to have a stranglehold on the necks of his enemies. And the father's sons are going to bow down to Judah in the end. In fact, this is the first time that we see the association between Judah and the lion, the royal figure of the lion. Judah's a lion's cub, we're told. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He crouched as a lion and as a lioness. Who dares rouse you? The whole figure of the Christ being the lion of the tribe of Judah, that imagery starts here in the book of Genesis 49, associating that messianic figure with the lion and with the king. We see that as well in verse 10. It says that the scepter is not going to depart from Judah. What is a scepter but an emblem of royal and regal authority and power? That place of power is never going to pass from Judah, we're told. And all the peoples of Israel, yes, but the peoples of the earth are going to owe this tribe and the heir from this tribe, they're going to owe him their allegiance and tribute, their obedience. And God is going to abundantly bless Judah as well. We see that in verses 11 and 12. It's a little hard to discern what's going on there. It's a little weird. It says, binding his foal to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He has washed his garments in wine, and his vestiture is the blood of grapes. It's a little hard to discern what's going on there, but this is the idea. Judah's going to be so blessed and so profoundly important, and God is going to grant him such abundance that it's going to be as though he's going to have this abundant vineyard, the choicest vineyard, the best vineyard, and God is going to give it to him. And it's going to be so overwhelmingly abundant that you can tie up a donkey next to your best grapes and not fear. Now, donkeys, like most animals, when placed next to something to eat, they're going to pick the fruit clean. And so you would never tie up a donkey next to a vineyard. Like you wouldn't put it next to fruit. And what's being communicated here is that Judah's so abundant that just go ahead and tie up the donkey next to your best grapes, because you're going to have so much it doesn't even matter. You're going to be that blessed. But also quite clearly the idea of a vineyard, an abundant vineyard, that goes hand in hand with the hope of the redeemed creation, of that the world will be renewed and that new creation life being redeemed by the Lord Jesus Christ has this idea of the same type of abundant life. Also, the association between wine becoming this sort of cleansing agent and being associated with the cleansing blood, that is also cryptically detailed in verse 11. It says that he washed his garments in wine and his vestiture in the blood of grapes. So something about the way in which this royal line and this royal figure is going to rule is that his vestments and his garments are going to be pure, and yet they're going to be pure somehow through this cleansing of blood, an association with the fruit of the vine. Abundance, cleansing, cleansing through blood, associating blood and wine together, and this overflowing abundance. I mean, this is the same sort of imagery and the same sort of, I guess, like the visual picture that Christ takes up and applies to himself. I mean, even the notion of someone coming with like abundant wine that overflows. I mean, that's the manner in which the people at the wedding at Cana responded when Christ turned water into wine. That it's like so much abundance, so much overflowing. Nobody does this. Nobody gives the choice wine after the people at the party have already had a little bit to drink. And speaking in particular of one figure, it says in verse 12, his eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Again, similar allusions to the type of figure that or the prophetic visions that we see of Christ in places like the book of Daniel or the book of Revelation. I mean, quite clearly where all this has been headed and where Genesis lands and where hopefully we land is that the author hasn't lost the plot at all. We've gone through lots of twists and turns. We've seen the patriarchs and we've seen all these different stories and things, and yet everything's been leading to show us that through the earliest times of recorded history, God has always been intent to preserve and to maintain the coming of this Messiah. That the promise given to Adam and Eve in the garden was still in effect as the book of Genesis comes to its conclusion. And even as Jacob himself might not fully comprehend and be aware of everything that he's saying here, nevertheless, the Holy Spirit moving through the prophetic words that we receive from Jacob is in operation, pointing us and aiming us at the coming of the Messiah. And so what we have to do this morning, our duty as we, hopefully this makes a little bit more sense of what was going on here and what this point is to continue to build up our hope and to place all of our faith and to put everything that we have and everything that we are into the hope of this Messiah, the Messiah that came from the line and the tribe of Judah. All the hopes that we have for the forgiveness of sins, for the redemption of the entire world is bound up in him. And even as we hear such a text as this, may our hearts be lifted up by learning more about him and seeing him more clearly, even in the obscure visions of this. May our hearts this morning be filled up with the longing of Christ, knowing in full confidence that he has come in his first advent to go to the cross, and anticipating and looking forward to his second coming. May we spend this Lord's Day in full hope and anticipation and joy in the line of the tribe of Judah, the Judah whose son was, and the coming of his heir was predicted so long ago. Let's pray.